Okay. Go ahead and call to order the Kodiak Island Borough Assembly work session of Thursday, October 12, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. and we are in the Borough Assembly chambers. First item is citizens' comments. This is local number is 907-486-3231. Toll-free number is 1-855-492-9202. This is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Anybody wishing to call in or come forward and speak at this time, please do sign in and turn the mic on.
Good evening, Dora Cross, Finance Director. I just wanted to put one last reminder out there for those that missed the first half payment deadline for property taxes on August 15th. The full payment, in order to avoid penalties and interest, is due Monday. So Tuesday, when you come in to make your full payment, you will be charged a 10% penalty plus interest. So please come in on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, Dora, for that. Anybody else wishing to speak, please come forward at this time.
Good evening. My name is
Go ahead and turn the mic on. It didn't sound like it was coming through. Should be green when you hit the button.
Go down
on.
here.
There you go. Thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, fellow assembly members. Some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm here this evening to speak to your ordinance 2024-10 regarding P&Z case 24002. In more English, it's 3 lots being changed from conservation to rural neighborhood commercial and 1 lot RR1 to rural neighborhood commercial. These properties are out in Kodiak, where I live. I've lived there since 1978. I was part of the original community members who worked through the grueling task of putting together the community comprehensive plan. I was also there when it was reviewed again. It looks like the last time might have been in 1987 when your ordinance was written. A lot of thought went into what kind of community we wanted to live in. We wanted to live in a community of rural residential, light density, with the preference of lots being 3 acres or more. That structure, or I guess I would call it development, was already in place that way. We reinforced it. When we had to designate what was going to be business or not business, we looked at the current usages that were there. And there were 3 areas that had kind of businesses there. Down at Road's End, which was all the way at road mile 40, I think it is. Road's End was there. They had a restaurant and bar, accommodations for maybe 6 people. The winery, which is what this property is, currently owned by Friends by the Ocean. It had a winery and accommodations for up to about 6. And then there was Kelson Bay Inn, which is closer to town, and again, it was a restaurant and bar with accommodations, approximately 6 people. So that's why those pieces of property on the comprehensive plan are marked for business. I think in our vision that we always intended for there to be businesses that served the community but were small, didn't have a huge impact, contributed back to the community, and were a part of the community as far as planning, etc.
Go ahead and continue for a bit.
Okay. I'm opposed to this current rezoning plan The Friends have already rezoned the property from rural residential 1, those ones that are now conservation, to conservation. And now they're coming back and they want to make it a rural neighborhood commercial. The difference in change and the impact and use of the property is significantly different for RR1 or conservation to this commercial designation. I've read the code. I'm concerned about the density. I'm concerned about the size of commercial entities that can show up on 5 lots as opposed to rural residential 1 and conservation. I'm also concerned, which you have a letter from me that kind of talks about this in code and stuff, but I'm also concerned about the aquifer and the impact of a development as dense. It includes 19 cabins. It's got a wellness center, which I'm assuming would include showers and toilets, et cetera, and a winery. They got to make the wine. They got to have services for the public. I'm concerned of the land and the aquifer being able to support that dense of an operation. The aquifer serves other people in the community as well. And I would hate for Kodiak to suffer the same thing that Bells Flats does, which is in a dry summer, you run out of water.
Jan, I'll have to have you stop there, but
Okay.
Thank you for coming. The other thing I want to make you aware of is, this is the work session.
Yes.
Next week, it's just introduction on there. The ordinance is introduced. Then 2 weeks later, which makes it November 2nd, is the public hearing on the rezone, just for your information. You're going to want to be there on the 2nd to testify before
Okay.
us. So,
Do any of you have questions? I'd be happy to try and respond.
under citizens and comments, we don't do that.
Okay.
So, but thank you for coming.
All right. Thank you.
All righty. Take care. Anyone else wishing to, or is there anyone on the phone, Nova? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda items. First one's assembly review of ordinance number FY 2024-9 regarding Board of Equalization processes. I will turn over to Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our assessor is here tonight to address this. It's a long one, but it's necessary in order for us to be able to finish the rest of our exemptions this year.
Thank you. So just to start at the beginning, due to the Superior Court's ruling in 2022 that the assessor could not review her own decision, assessing staff has made a change in the procedure for application review. Now, instead of the assessor making the determination, an assessing appraiser reviews, processes each exemption application and mails out a determination letter. In recent litigation matters before the Supreme Court, in one case, the Superior Court ruled the formal review by the assessor that she acted as that formal review acted as an appeal. And in another case, the Superior Court ruled the formal review as a review. To avoid further misinterpretations, we are requesting that the wording formal review found in KIBC 3.35050G2 be changed to reconsideration by the assessor. Recording that meeting is also another change in staff's procedure that resulted from the 2022 Superior Court decision. So we've made some adjustments, but the biggest changes are to this ordinance are due to the current litigation, and that is because 3.35050 Board of Equalization, or BOE, currently states that the BOE only hears appeals for relief from an alleged error in valuation on properties before the board by an appellant. Alaska State Statute 2945-200 affords any appellant to appeal to the Board of Equalization, and that a local ordinance cannot preclude that right. So for that, we created KIBC 3.35055, Board of Equalization for Exemption Appeals. This allows the Assembly to act as the BOE for all exemption appeals, similar to the way that you guys act for senior and disabled vet appeals. And these hearings would be conducted in a similar manner as the Board of Equalization for valuation appeals hearings. And the new code is clear on the procedure and would require a quorum to be seated for the hearing. That's it in a nutshell. You guys. But
Makes
that's
it sound
why
so
we created this. We were trying to obey the court in every which way. In 2022, we changed the way that the assessor does it. And when we had litigation just recently for, can I say the names? No. Okay, so when we had the most recent Superior Court one, which is not the big one, that's where they came back and said, yeah, your review is a review, and because we recorded it, they said it was totally a review and not an appeal. So we've tried to change some of our stuff, but the Superior Court has remanded everything back, saying you have to have a BOE. So our letters can't go out until this is decided. We can't review anymore because we need to be able to put in our letters that they have the 30 days to appeal to either the BOE or the Superior Court. And they can choose not to come to you guys as the exemption BOE, but we have to be able to give them that opportunity.
Okay. Scott?
This note from Ryan Sherritt talking about this. He says the following. After assessor's determination denying an exemption application in whole or in part, only the owner of record may appeal a decision by the assessor to deny an exemption under this, and an appeal may be made. You've crossed out must, so an appeal may be made either to the Assembly. Holy Christmas.
Oh my gosh. I don't know what's going on.
You've been hacked.
Do I throw it? No, the volume is off. I think it's Larry Ledoux's son. It's hacked.
Got into it.
Hard shutdown.
I tried, yeah. Okay.
Just hold it.
I'm gonna hold it for a hot minute. Sorry about that.
I'm sure glad
That's
my
okay.
paper
Thank you
doesn't
for
talk back
lightening
like
up the
that.
mood for me.
There were 2 points that he made. One was that we should identify the borough as the first choice for hearing an appeal and not the state Superior Court in the 3rd Judicial District. I don't know whether we can do that or not.
So we have to give them the option. They have to have the choice to
Okay.
go to the Superior Court without coming to the BOE also.
Well-
So we just have to say, you can go, so in the original letters by the appraiser, it's going to say you can ask for a reconsideration by the assessor, or go to the BOE, or go to the Superior Court.
Okay.
If they choose to go to this Superior Court, the Superior Court's going to remand it back and say, hey, you didn't do the reconsideration by the assessor. So, and in that one case, that's exactly what's coming back to. It's got to come back to the reconsideration.
Well, the other part was on lines 78 and 77, 78, where it says here, members, the Board of Equalization for hearing valuation appeals shall be composed of 5 persons, not assembly members, appointed by the assembly. Is that the same as the Board of Equalization?
No, so the 3.35050 is the BOE sitting for valuations, and that is the BOE that we have right now, and they can only hear valuations.
Okay.
The 3.35055 is creating the BOE for exemptions, and that can only be the assembly.
Okay, thank you. I think that covers his comments on it.
Yeah, now where it talks about the members, the 5 members, do we even want that in here? Or should that be removed?
Are you suggesting that the assembly sits in place of our
Yes.
current sitting BOE for valuations? That's,
Just for this stuff here.
no, but so that's just for valuations. What we're setting up for the Board of Equalization will not be dealing with valuations. It will be reviewing or reconsidering, depending on the language you want to use, what the assessor has done. Or
It'll
the
probably-
assessing staff
I
has
guess it's
done.
not very clear.
Yeah,
So-
if you use the
Ex-
same name for both boards.
Right.
Well, we have to, but if you look at 33, line 33, section 2, that section 3.350, oh, I'm sorry, I think that should say 050.
So which line?
Oh, sorry, line 74, section 3, that section 3.35050, Board of Equalization Valuation Appeals. That is just for the regular BOE that we have right now, and they only hear valuation appeals. If you go to line number,
245.
Can we change the name to
Yeah.
Valuation Board of Appeals and
exemption.
Adjudication Board of Appeals?
Something.
I
it's
can
not very
certainly
clear.
check. Because in at 245, we say it's 3.35055, that is Board of Equalization Exemption Appeals. So you have valuation, which would be the BOE as it stands right now, and you have exemption, which would be you guys. But I can certainly ask if we can
I would like to
change the
try and
wording.
make it a little more user-friendly.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
not,
It's
you
confusing.
know what it is because you work with it all the time. The average person reading this is going to get confused, and that's my concern, and that's yours too.
I'm
Scott.
highly average.
Okay.
So the letter would literally say KIBC 3.35050 on every exemption one, and it says 3.35050 or 55 on the exemption one and 50 on the appeals for
Still
during
confusing.
March. Okay.
No offense, but those numbers are driving me crazy.
Okay.
Larry,
Thank you. A couple of things. Has our attorney reviewed this,
Yes.
and he supports all of these?
He is the one
Wrote
that
it.
helped me write it.
He did, okay.
Yep.
I'm really curious because, I've worked for a bureaucracy in a leadership position, and due process is fairly important, and Superior Court review is at the end of that process, not a choice. And it's fascinating to me that they can choose which way to go, because many judges will send it back if they don't follow due process.
Exactly.
And going to review of the assembly is part of that, and to skip that important step is intriguing to me, and our lawyer said that's okay.
The lawyer said that we have to write it in the letter that way, but that if somebody came in and said, I want to appeal this, but they didn't do the assembly review or the Board of Equalization exemption appeal review, then the Superior Court will remand it back to them,
Well,
back to you.
that concerns me a little bit, that choice, simply because it's expensive for us, because then we're going to have to pay an attorney. I mean, it's a legal process, and it's going to cost a lot of money, and I see no need for it other than an end process, which is usually what a court review is. And so I would be concerned almost to talk to our attorney and say, why is that there like that? Just my own knowledge. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm not trying to be.
I mean, I'm sure he won't care if I put it in as you must do a review and then you can go to the Superior Court, but we have to give them the choice.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, but I haven't,
Okay, I'll check.
it's however we write it, I suppose, but usually court review is, again, an end. The other comment I have is that I don't get hung up on the specificity in the ordinance, because the lack of specificity gets us in trouble. Any ambiguity, even if it's designed to clarify for the public, you can end up in court, because courts attorneys probably love ambiguity because it's gray. But I think we have to be very specific. What I do believe, though, and I think it's very important, that at some point in time, we should have a simple handbook, for the public that is written for them. Here are the steps. If you feel like, this is not correct. Here are the steps that you go to, and to explain to the public, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that would reflect the code, but it would be written as sort of a handbook. Because when we don't do that, we exclude the public from active participation in an appeal, because it gets so complicated, they don't know what to say. And they don't have access to an attorney. So I have found that if we can be really clear, legally clear in our ordinances, no ambiguity. Okay, you know I'm not a black and white person, but, I'm sorry. I think that's important, and so I don't really mind, I don't want to make it too user-friendly, I want to make it legally proper. But I do believe that we need a public handbook that is very clear in language that people can understand, indeed, maybe even translated into another language.
So we do offer on the website for sorry, I don't want to use the numbers again, the BOE valuation, we do have a handbook. So every March, we make sure that it's updated and available on the website, because you guys we can't certify the roll until that valuation BOE meets in May. So there is a handbook, and I would be happy to update it with all of this information and have it specifically on the exemption application also, while they're filling it out, that if you decide you don't like to, or, the rules or not, the procedure is on there, and information on how to fill out the form correctly, and we can definitely add if you want to appeal and carry
I
on
think
with
that
that
would be
too.
really helpful, and I'd appreciate that if you have
Yep.
time,
Yep.
like the public would.
Thank you. Jared?
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, my hard drive just crashed and started
Never
making
do a hard shut off.
Angry.
I forgot to tell you that.
angry noises. Oh, my goodness. So I apologize for that. I want to echo what Larry was saying. Writing code and writing ordinances, writing policies, not with us in mind, but right with the public in mind. When we, when during a public meeting, when we were discussing the senior citizen exemption process, our lawyer said something that I didn't like, where it's a process laid out like this, and I asked about a more user-friendly, citizen-friendly kind of process, and he just kind of brushed it off and said that's the way it is. They've got to become lawyers, and so that didn't sit well with me, and so so I just wanted to echo, let's once this is in place, let's make sure that we have something that's more accessible for the non-lawyers out there. I do have a few questions on some of the lines in here.
What line?
So bear with me. Line 52, or that paragraph, line 52 through 53. I just want to understand the process correctly. So an appellant submits a request for, I guess they're not the appellant at this point, but the owner requests a reconsideration of the assessor. You either grant or deny the owner's reconsideration. If you grant it, the assessor issues a new final decision, providing your reasons. But you struck out the line of the 30 days of the meeting. I think is there a reason to strike the time limit? I think a time limit is helpful and helps direct the public when they can receive a response, but.
So the original letter is going to say that they have 30 days to come back and ask for the reconsideration. I think down further, we do say the 30 days.
Line 54.
Oh, yep.
Well, that's
In line
when.
54, after the that reconsideration suspends the time for appeal, and a new 30-day
Right.
time limit for the appeal under subsection 8 begins.
Yeah, so what is the assessor's timeline then? How long do you have?
30 days,
You have 30 days.
right,
From,
after the meeting. So, for instance, we have a reconsideration going right now. They requested, so the court said we had to do that within 30 days, but the attorney came back and said, I won't be back in town until November 13th. So we have it scheduled for after that because we are being, we're like, oh, okay, if you're not going to be there, we don't want to try and, make somebody do something when they're not available or if they're on vacation. So their new timeline for appeal they'll have the reconsideration with us on the 16th, and then I have 30 days to give them a new letter.
okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
And then they
and-
have 30 days
Right.
to appeal it either back to
Right.
the BOE exemption appeal or to the Supreme Court.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that for myself.
And I'll make sure that that's in there, because under 54, that's the way I read it, is that the new 30-day time limit for appeals shall begin from the date of distribution of the assessor's decision.
So I get everything that you said. You said they have 30 days after the assessor's decision, and you're trying to make it clear, but it's not clear because so what the question is how long does the assessor have to respond? And you said it's 30 days. But every single line where the assessor is supposed to reply by is struck out the 30 days. So there is nowhere, once we take these red lines and blank them out, then there is nowhere in this that says you have 30 days as the assessor, not
As
the appellate or the,
Okay.
so it's plain that whoever is objecting to the ruling has 30 days, but it does not say anywhere, once you take all the red lines out, it does not say anywhere in here that you, as the assessor,
assessor
have 30 days.
Okay, I see what
So
you're saying.
everything's clear for the appeal,
Mm-hmm.
but not for your response,
Okay.
because they're all struck out. So that's what I think you were trying to get at.
Yeah, yes, that's exactly it.
Thank you.
Thank you. My next one is date of distribution. Is distribution defined anywhere as?
What line are you on?
Oh, I'm sorry, 69. Email, mail, phone call. I don't, again, this is part of the, user-friendly language. Date of distribution sounds like, legal speak to me, and I understand what it means, but I'm just wondering, is it defined anywhere? What exactly does that mean?
The date that
mailed
it
out.
gets mailed.
Okay, I think that should be
Okay.
part of that specificity that Larry was talking about. Let's see. Yeah, that's the first line. It might be elsewhere, but my next question is way further down on 290. This is me pretending to be a lawyer. For the line, was it 290, chairperson? I'm just clarifying, the chairperson is the mayor or the DPO in this case?
I believe you're under the Board of Equalization Valuations. So
No,
you.
line
yeah.
290.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
It's on
Yes,
page
Okay.
8.
yes.
Yeah, okay. There is something in here that says that the chairperson may exclude evidence, is on line 290, irrelevant to the issues appealed. That's fine. Is there a process by which the rest of,
Because the whole body decided that.
gotcha. They can't unilaterally,
No, because you're all going to see the we're going to, so if you're in an appeal and somebody brings in information late, you're still going to see it. Because it was so late, you aren't going to use it. No.
It's not real clear.
Yeah,
No, that's not what it says. It says the chairperson can decide on
Yeah.
on what evidence is
Yeah, that's the way I
presented.
read that.
And so,
You all see it. So, I mean, it's in every book
a lot of
that we
power.
give.
it is.
well,
Too much, okay. I'm writing that down. Too much power for Scott.
but
Too much for Scott.
Yeah.
James, go ahead.
Not that Scott, that Scott. No, that Scott.
Okay, so you want it just to
Who's on
say
first?
that
The-
as a
the-
board, they have to
The
agree?
majority, there has to be.
There's got to be, yeah, some
Right.
kind of consensus, what evidence is,
I think Larry's got a comment on what you're talking about there, Larry, or not?
Well, Robert's, thank you. Robert's rules says that we can challenge the chair. And in all other respects, we're following Robert's rules as the board, we're not throwing them out. We're still acting as an assembly following those. So it almost feels like that statement is redundant, that the chair does make the decision, but the decision is subject to the challenge in Robert's, because we could overrule it, which we've
That's what I
done
was-
once already.
assuming, yeah.
But it brings into question. James, go ahead.
Well, I guess, sorry. My issue with this statement is that the chair can see the evidence before coming in and saying that's not going to be presented to the rest of the equalization board.
That's the way I see
And
it.
so all evidence needs to be coming forward. Otherwise, you're never going to see it.
Yeah, because you're not going to know that I excluded it.
Right.
The
Because the
problem,
chair can decide at any point, doesn't have to be in the meeting.
so the problem with that, and you guys not getting the evidence, is that everything has to be distributed 10 days before the hearing. So you guys are going to see that evidence because you're going to get everything that we have. The only evidence that he could say that to that you wouldn't see would be something that they brought on that day. But anything late that they brought to us, you are going to see it because we're going to present it. My staff will present it as a package to all of you the 10 days before. Because this isn't like
So-
senior exemptions where
So
you only
I
see a
get
little
that.
bit.
I totally get how you work, but that doesn't mean your predecessor or your successor, excuse me, will do the same. They could just present it to the chair earlier than that and then present the rest of the package after.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? You gotta future fix it so
Yeah.
that somebody else can't.
This is not real clear. I see problems with it, potential. Jared, anything?
I do, I just want to make sure this was, if Seema doesn't have any question, is that direction enough, or, okay. My last one is on, just below that, line 293, is that right? 294, the 10 days, okay, yes. We were just talking about, within 10 days of filing the request for all documentary evidence should be submitted to the assessor's office. Can we include language that clarifies that all of the assessor's evidence will also be available to the appellant at that time? 10 days before. I know you do make that available, but I would like to see it in code.
Makes it clear. I
Yeah.
agree.
And that's it for
We
me.
get different groups.
Thank you,
10 years
Seema.
from now, interpreting things different.
Yeah.
On there. James, do you have, go ahead.
Probably gonna create more changes up front too, because I think
Yeah.
that we copy
Yeah.
it over and then just change VOE evaluation to VOE. So
Right.
we probably see these changes on the other side.
Yeah.
James, did you have anything else?
No, I just wanted to clarify the.
Right, and I understood that.
didn't understand because-
Yeah. That were related there. Larry, anything else that you have? Any other questions by anybody? Larry?
Not a question. I appreciate your willingness to go over this with us, and clearly you know what you're talking about, and thank you.
All right, thank you.
I do like how we limit when we're in the Board of Equalization.
You want to turn your mic on?
No,
Okay.
we limit 5 minutes during one of those,
Instead of 3.
but we don't want to limit ourselves to 5 minutes.
Yeah,
Heavens, no.
yeah. Yeah, I know what you're saying. I've seen that before. Okay, then moving on to the next item is discussion of the state and federal capital improvements projects list. Amy?
Thank you. In agenda setting last week, I mentioned again that our state lobbyist, Mark Hickey, is going to be here on the 26th, and so we decided it would be a good time for the Assembly to look at our previous state and federal lists. So in your packet, you'll see the fiscal year 23 lists, and so we are trying to figure out a process for the Assembly to figure out how they want to proceed. In the past, that list has been modified before it gets to the Assembly. In the planning and zoning this year, the chair asked the mayor, how many items do you think the Assembly wants to see? And having sat on both sides, the mayor is staring at me, having sat on both sides, what I wanted to see was the entire list come to the Assembly instead of a list that had already been modified, because I think that's the list that you should be seeing when we decide what's going to go on that list, instead of a modified or curated list before it gets to you. So I just stood up in that meeting and I said, if you, like, I want all the village projects to come before the Assembly. I want everything to end up here. So we're working on that process and getting that here. The other thing that we did for this is for next year at the Rural Forum, I asked our village communities to get their stuff to us a month earlier than they have in the past. So we have time to help vet them and make sure that they're turning in numbers and projects that we can use, just so we have a little more time with them. So hopefully that gets some more village participation in these lists.
James?
So I have a couple of questions. Line 210, Sergeant Creek Community Playground and Basketball Court. I thought we already gave funds for that.
These are fiscal year 23 lists that will have to be updated for this year. So there's roof replacements and stuff that we already did in the past year. So this is you can pat yourself on the back for some of that stuff getting taken care of over the year, but this is just reference material from what we did last year.
Okay. Amy, I was thinking we were going to have the stuff that come out of planning and zoning here tonight. That is not here tonight.
I think we can
Let's-
probably get it for you if you want to
Let's take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
Thank you. reconvene the work session here. Yeah, this is what they've gone over, and this is the stuff that we're going to be looking at, so I wanted to make sure everybody had this now, too. This is, what's in the packet is last year's, and so there's more information here, which includes all of the rural communities also. Amy, do you want SEMA to present as to, I can't remember if Chris was here when we put this together. He was? Okay, then Chris. Make a little presentation on it.
Chris French, Community Development Director. On the CIP list, you have the resolution before you from the Planning and Zoning Commission. That was approved on September 20th, 2023 by the commission, and this was their list. It includes all of the items submitted by service areas, second-class cities and villages, and they did provide an order to some of these. Primarily, I think the first 15, they did have some discussion about ordering those when they made their decision on the CIP list as presented here.
So I apologize for that not being in your packet. The idea of doing this early on the 12th is that we can come up with questions that we want to ask Mark when he's here on the 26th. So sometimes when, and I'm guilty of this, sometimes when our lobbyists come, we haven't prepared and we don't have questions for them. So the idea behind this is that everyone has the list. So when he's here, we can ask him what the state legislators' priorities are this year and how we can align what we're doing with what they're thinking, so we have a better chance of getting some projects taken care of.
So basically, this is information for everyone to have, that in 2 weeks, we're a little more prepared on there. So not that I'm expecting you to digest this all right now, but I wanted to make sure that we all have it on there. So if anybody's got any questions at this time, Joe?
I don't have a question, but I know from the forum that the people from the outlying villages were very happy that they were involved so much earlier this time. And looking at this list that came from the planning and zoning, it's good to see much more of a mix than there were in the past. So I like how this is turning out, and I think next year is even going to be better from the sounds of the plans that are going forward for next year. It's going to work out even better for us all. I think focusing on having the guy here on the 26th is going to help to maybe target some of their lists and their priorities, so that will be helpful. Hopefully, some people from the villages can come in to take part in this. If not, we have Starlink in pretty much all of the villages now, so they do have the ability to look in on this and listen and give us their opinion. So I like what it looks like so far.
Any other questions or comments? Larry?
Turned on my mic. You know, there are so many things on this list. I don't know what the total is, but I suspect it's $500 million. Just looking at if you added them all up. And, you know, in the past, the state had a lot of money, and they funded billions of dollars of public works projects. If you submitted it, you got it. And now it's not that way anymore. The state capital improvement budget is really small, and even though the federal dollars are coming in, it takes a long time, and there are so many things on that list that it's hard for anybody to know what's important. And then you see so many things on this list that you have to ask, how did planning and zoning, what rubric did they use to actually prioritize this list? You know, did they have 5 people come and say this is important, so that becomes top? Or is there actually a rubric that says how many people affected, you know, who's responsible, other sources of revenue, who are you trying to get the money from, feds, state, native corporations, borough, taxpayers, whatever. None of that's there. And it's not a complaint, I'm just saying that the reason fish travel in schools is because a shark, they don't know which one to grab. And so it troubles me that a list is that long without any kind of reference to say why it is a priority. Because I don't know if something on the list, 30, you know, I don't know how many there are on there, but I don't know if that's more important than something that's in the top 10, because I don't know what measurement that you use to determine safety, you know, sports, humans. So that's problematic. The other thing is that the state of Alaska is very short of money. I mean, when you just look at what's going on right now. And when we make a list, some things we have to put on at the top of the list, because if we don't, then the legislature will say, we don't care, like the Tustamina replacement. Okay, that has to be number 1. So we're looking at a $50 million bill. Well, it's not really gonna, how do I say this? It has to be at the top of the list because somebody will say, well, it's not important to them, or they would have made it at the top of the list. So it has to be there, but we also know that just because we want a $50 million ferry, we're not going to get it. So what happens is, and then we put all these really expensive things that we want up there when there's no money, unless the legislature decides to bond, which they've done in the past, but not recently. You know, I don't know, 10 years ago, they did $1 billion go bond.
15.
Yeah. But they haven't recently. And so what troubles me is when you look at where the money goes at the end of the sessions for the last 10 years, it's small projects. And we keep putting these mega projects at the top of the list instead of ones that really have a chance to be funded, if that makes any sense. And because there's no rubric, and the other thing, and this is not, Mr. French, this is not you, this is just why I don't think the process serves us very well, is that Senator Stevens and Representative Stutes should almost be here sitting down with us, because they're going to make the decision on whether these are funded or not, and they're going to know that they have this much money. And we have the president of the Senate is Dr. Stevens, or Senator Stevens, if you will. And I believe that they should both be here sitting with us so that they could look at these priorities, because they're actually making the decision. No one else cares about us in the legislature, if that makes any sense, except them. And they should be a part of it. And all I'm saying is that this list is too long. There's no rubric to determine the importance of it. And finally, I will say that our communities on Kodiak Island shoot ourselves in the foot because we don't work together. The city has a list, and the borough has a list, and somebody else might have a list. And I think we do need to try to work together, and maybe that's impossible. I believe that Assemblymember Sherritt shared that too in his notes, that we should do that. And finally, I will say, and I'll try to make it finally, is that the growth and the funding of our native corporations has been phenomenal. They're from road work to the funding. I mean, Joe is an expert at this and he's talked about it. But I sometimes think we should involve them in some of these discussions too, because they may have sources of funds available to them to do some of these projects that are beyond state and federal. Joe, I'm sorry, I'm talking to you directly, but the road project to you is one of them. And I think sometimes we just need to sit together as a whole and really figure out what our priorities are. and then what we really believe we can fund, because it's not really expensive, and we also could distill out those big projects like the Tustamina that we have to mention. Or when the governor looks at the money, they'll say Kodiak doesn't care because they didn't list the Tustamina as number one. Okay, it's sort of like damned if you do and damned if you don't, but in any case, thank you.
Scott?
I know there are a lot of different pots of money out there at the federal level, and a lot of them are hidden and have funny names on them, which may not apply to the municipality of the borough, but might apply to the villages. And they come in a variety of different forms, from Department of Agriculture to Department of Interior, all kinds of different projects. And we don't really have a good handle on what funding opportunities there are for those kinds of things, because they're kind of hidden. And I think a lot of these projects on here from the villages would probably profit from having a close look at that. And certainly our federal request should include information about that. I agree with Dr. Ledoux that having some kind of a rubric to evaluate them would be useful. And particularly the estimate of the cost, whether or not that has been validated or vetted by engineers or contractor people that handle that kind of thing, so that we're not stepping in it that way. Thank you.
What we're trying to do is do a better job each year, so it's improving. And what goes on the list and the priority is up to the assembly. So, on there, further discussion, Jared, did you have your hand up?
No,
I know Joe did, but.
Oh, Joe's first.
Okay. Joe, go ahead.
I think it's important to always remember that these lists are used to help to get funding. You made mention of that, and there are multiple pots of fundings that are available to tribes and to corporations. But that doesn't diminish the need for them to be on a list like this. I think that, I can't say that, but I think it's important to keep them on the list. I think we need to have, I think in the past we had like 20 that came from the assembly, and that seems like a good number to me. I can speak for Yazinki because I've been involved in their CIP creation, and the numbers that come from them are vetted. They do call people and get estimates from the people that they need to get them from. I would assume that the other villages do as well, because they know you can't just put a number up there and hope that it sticks, because they know there are people sitting up here that are going to check into them. I think it's important that we continue to put the village projects on, whether they have alternate funding sources or not. I think that was one of the complaints that we made when I lived in the village, was that there were some projects on this list that they weren't as important as some of the ones that we were putting forward as rural communities, and it was kind of disheartening to see at times. But I like the direction that we're going into now, and certainly would be good to talk about these, and hopefully we get some of the people from the villages that put these lists together is to defend their choices and to try to get their projects higher in the list.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Jared?
The list from P&Z, haven't really digested it, but it's a great list, just skimming through, and that really highlights the need for infrastructure projects in the borough. I would agree with, that making a shorter list for legislative circulation, and we should absolutely include our representative and senator in on this discussion too, if we can solicit their feedback. And I think what really would help our conversations, and we can't do it this year, but I know the manager has advocated for this, is we don't have an updated strategic plan. We don't really have a comprehensive land use plan. We don't have a comprehensive economic development plan. We don't have a comprehensive housing plan, which I think is included in the Pro House grant. Those things would help us tremendously in our CIP conversations, and would help make our decisions for us. They really would. So I would just like to plug in for planning for these more comprehensive plans that we could use and rely on, and those could serve as our rubrics for how we decide what goes on the list or not. So I think that's it.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments or questions on there? Then I'm going to go ahead and move on to the federal list here a little bit. So going to the federal list, which is on page 46 of 50 here. I see we have the Kodiak Island Hospital addition on there as number 1. On the second paragraph, this project proposes to demolish the 3,200 square foot old hospital. That square footage is grossly inaccurate. And so I'd like to see that corrected there. And anything else that can be addressed on that, and maybe expand that a little bit. We have the St. Herman Harbor is number 2. Infrastructure replacement, and we have the phase 1 and 2. I think they have some new estimates, and I also feel that it should include whether it's phase 3 and 4 down the road, because basically it's at least a $60 million project. So we might want to talk with the city to get more of an update on that. Then, then it talks about views of recommendation, priority. Then we talk, number 1 is broadband service in the rural areas. That's actually been happening. And so I think that needs to come off. What personally I think should be the number 1 federal list is PILT. Is PILT money for the Kodiak Island Borough. Payment in lieu of taxes. And part of the reason for putting it as number 1 here is there is a push, because I am on the NACO board representing Alaska Municipal League, that be increased. There's stuff going through the committees to double the PILT for Alaska, which is something like, I'm trying to remember, I want to say it's currently about 34 cents per acre, doubling to around 80 cents per acre. It would mean an additional $1 million for us on there a year. So we currently get about $1 million. It would take it to $2 million. And in light of what is going on in fisheries prices and that, as far as our severance tax go, we're going to see a drastic decrease in that in the future. So those are the only things I have right now. I'm open to suggestions on there. So see what the rest of you think, or whether you feel would talk with Mark Hickey on there, but I just thought I'd mention that.
Well, this would also, sorry, Mr. Mayor, this would also be talking to Sebastian O'Kelly, obviously our federal lobbyist, and Sebastian usually helps us write this. So I would want him to weigh in a little bit more than Mark on this list.
I agree, but it don't hurt to ask both of them, so they're here. He's here. He will be here in 2 weeks. So you're welcome on there. Hearing no one else right now at this time, we'll move on to packet review. And the first item is we have a public hearing on the Kodiak Island Borough's application to pathways to removing obstacles to housing, parentheses, pro housing. Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, our Community Development Director, Chris French, is here to tell us about this grant.
So this is a grant that the federal government's been talking about now for about a year and a half. The actual notice of funding opportunity was released in August of this year. This grant looks at reducing or removing obstacles or barriers to development of affordable housing in local communities. As part of that, they have an emphasis on planning, but also emphasis on looking at regulatory barriers as well as other kinds of barriers to the development of affordable housing within communities. As part of that grant application, I think as we've notified the Assembly before in managers' reports, staff has been putting together information for a grant proposal for this grant. The actual grant proposal was posted on the Borough website on September 29th. As part of the grant application requirements, Housing and Urban Development requires that the draft grant application be posted for a minimum of 15 days, and that the local community also hold a public hearing to take comments from the public regarding the grant application. So we're looking for the public hearing to be on October 19th before the Assembly, and then we'll close the comment period on October 29th, and we'll actually do a 30-day comment period from the public. Our deadline for submitting the grant application is October 30th by the end of the day Eastern time. And that's it, unless you have any questions about the grant.
James?
There's lots of numbers, dollars-wise, road system, $2,070 versus $1,933 is an example here. Where are you getting the median mortgage numbers, median rental numbers,
Correct. Okay.
and so forth throughout this whole
So
packet?
we could not have done this application without the housing needs assessment that was conducted by the Kodiak Island Borough Housing Authority, which came out in spring of last year. So we're using their information primarily for the grant application.
Okay, thanks.
Any other, what's that? I said they're way off. Oh, really? Further discussion, questions? Larry?
Just a question, as you put this grant together, are you required to present socioeconomic information, homelessness, that kind of thing, as part of your basis?
We're not required to. They want you to have a proposal and looking at information that has been developed for the community, but also it's more about what the proposal is, not necessarily about, all of the demographic data. They are looking at certain communities above others. So in the grant application, they do identify certain geographies as being priority areas for affordable housing. We'll say the Coast Guard base, the city of Kodiak, and the Kodiak Island Borough have been identified by HUD as priority areas for affordable housing. And so that was one of the main focus points that we had in terms of drafting this grant application.
The reason I ask is if you need that kind of demographic information, the school district has collected a substantial amount of information that would be ready to go and probably very current.
Okay. Thank you.
Jared?
Thanks for working on this. It's impressive, and I agree. Yeah, the needs assessment from Keo. There's a lot of information in there. What I read through as much as I could over the past couple of days, and maybe I missed it. There's you mentioned regulatory barriers a couple of times. But I don't remember seeing any examples of those regulatory barriers. What are the barriers that you're hearing about?
So, some of the things
zoning?
Some of the things we talked about in zoning would be, there's the availability of land and how it's zoned. How much is zoned single family versus other types of housing, of other types of zoning within the community. One of the things that in the grant application proposal is in phase one is to look at the current zoning regulations as well as the current comprehensive plan to determine, where are we missing information, where is there issues with regards to current housing needs. One of the things that, I've had some discussions with Planning and Zoning Commission about have been some gap analysis for housing needs within the community, or where are we missing
Right.
price points for housing based on income levels. And so those are things that would be part of the grant application and proposal.
And then one more. So we're not prepared, the borough's not prepared to leverage any funds. That's a lot of points that we miss out on in the grant review if we're not contributing or not proposing to contribute or to leverage any of our own funds for this grant.
Yeah, it's not a requirement of the
Right.
grant that funds be leveraged
But it
there's no
helps.
matching fund requirement or anything like that. Of course, it would,
Yeah.
it would help in any grant application.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Joe?
I just have one more thing. I don't remember where I saw it, but I think there was something like 4 million acres or something. I think one of the things that we have to address is the availability of actual land as a way to help people get into housing. Once we get some land, then I think the other parts will fall into place a little bit easier, but it's hard to build if there's nowhere to build. I think we should, I would like to see more single-family homes rather than apartment complexes and that as well. But you look at some of the neighborhoods that they put up here, Spruce Cape, you go drive down there, and there are no sidewalks. I think that the design has to be better because it makes it look as if we don't actually want people. What we want are robots. Somebody that's going to drive to their work and then drive home and not get to know their neighbors or get to know, the people around them. What we want are family-friendly neighborhoods that people want to move into, not somewhere where they're going to feel like they're only here. Their only reason for being on this earth is to go make money for the boss, for the man, we need to be looking for people that want to be here for multiple reasons and not only just to work. So I think we need to open up land with a better thought of being user-friendly. Because it's really hard to drive down those roads in the wintertime. If you can imagine people trying to walk on those roads with the snow berms, the ice,
Any other comments? Thanks, James. So, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the next one. Thanks, Chris. Ordinance number FY 2024-6, amending the Kodiak Island Borough Personnel Rules and Regulations. Amy?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. This is the third time we've talked about this. This is the personnel manual change to match the changes that were made in the collective bargaining agreement. We also have made changes to name the human resources representative, just update that to the way we're doing business in the borough. And it also addresses the fact that we have a permanent employee who works part-time to allow them the same benefits of our full-time regular employees. I haven't made any I haven't made any changes since you saw it last week. We did update our spelling errors, include language that better clarified leave without pay and healthcare benefits.
Oh, that's changes.
That, I told you about it last week. Nothing since last week.
Okay. I didn't have any problems last time around. So, anyone else have any questions? Seeing none, we'll move on to the next public hearing ordinance, which is number FY 2024-7, reestablishing boards, committees, and commissions as established in the Kodiak Island Borough Code of Ordinances Title II, Administration and Personnel, Chapter 2.100, Boards, Committees, and Commissions. Staff report, Nova?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the Assembly. This ordinance is before you under public hearing for us to reestablish these boards, these 5 boards that are listed in the agenda summary. We need to reestablish them before the end of the year. We have put out the public hearing notices, and I've also included in your packet the notice or the email that I've sent to the different board members of the committees. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, move on to contracts. This contract number FY 2024-21, approving an updated fire protection agreement between Kodiak Island Borough Airport Protection District and the Women's Bay Fire Protection District. Staff report, Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In March of 1997, the borough created an airport district for fire protection, duly named the Kodiak Island Airport Protection District, for the purpose of providing protection within that service area. Kodiak Transfer is in that area, and so in order to have insurance, they needed to be able to show that they would be covered in case of a fire. So we set that up in 2001. When the agreement was actually executed, there was a levy rate for that district, which was 1 mil. That levy rate actually changed in 2003 to 1.25 mils, but that document was never updated. So we're just cleaning up, making sure that that document actually matches the mill rate that is being charged to those people. So what you'll see in the resolution is just an updated agreement that has the correct mill rate listed out. And then if that mill rate changes, we would update that agreement as necessary. That it has been wrong since 2001.
Questions, comments? And the term of this agreement?
In there, it just says that it automatically renews each year, but the Women's Bay Fire Department retains the right to review the fee annually in case that changes or we want to change it during the budget process.
I think it needs to come back to the Assembly. There needs to be some kind of a term on this so it isn't in perpetuity. So I'd suggest we think about it as to what. Just like we find out that we didn't even realize it was there and needed to be updated. So I appreciate you bringing it forward, but I think it should have some kind of a tickler that it comes up every so often, be it 5 years or something like that.
We can definitely look at that.
Okay. Next item is resolution number FY 2024-9, ratifying and certifying the results of the October 3rd, 2023 regular municipal election. Staff report, Nova.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the Assembly. The October 3, 2023 borough election went smoothly, and it was conducted with care, integrity, and efficiency by the election officials and clerk's office staff. The 43 precinct election officials, including 2 youth vote ambassadors, should be commended for their excellent work in this election. The 4 canvass team members worked a 10-hour day yesterday to canvass and then also recount the election results due to the difference of less than 2% between 2 candidates on the assembly race. I am pretty confident of what we have before you, the resolution-wise. We've done our work, and I would encourage you to adopt and certify the election next week. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to ordinances for introduction. First one is ordinance number FY 2024-9, amending Kodiak Island Borough Code Title III, Revenue and Finance, Chapter 3.35, Real Property Tax, Section 3.35.030, real and personal property exemptions from taxation, and 3.35.050 and 3.35055 Safeguarding Board of Equalization. Staff report, Amy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was our first agenda item, and so I think staff already has direction on how to make those updates at this point.
I agree, but is there any other questions or comments by the Assembly? Seeing none. Thank you. You're
Thank
off
you.
the hook. But it's a mouthful with all that. Next ordinance for introduction is ordinance number 2024-10, an ordinance of the Assembly of the Kodiak Island Borough rezoning Lot 1 and 2 Isthmus Point, U.S. Survey 4935, Lot 1A, Isthmus Bay, Lot 2A, Isthmus Bay, from Conservation District to Rural Neighborhood Commercial, and Lot 12, Brookers Lagoon, from RR1, Rural Residential 1 District to Rural Neighborhood Commercial District. This is Planning and Zoning Case 24-2. Staff report, Amy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our Community Development Director is here to talk about this case.
A public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission was held on September 20th, 2023. Community Development staff recommended approval of the rezone request to the Planning and Zoning Commission primarily because the future land use map for the Kodiak area as part of the 2008 Comprehensive Plan recommended that the properties in this area be zoned to the Rural Neighborhood Commercial District. And in case 24-002 before the Planning and Zoning Commission, this rezoning request is listed in ordinance FY 2024-10 was unanimously recommended for approval to the Assembly by the Planning and Zoning Commission by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you. Any questions? Oh, Jared.
I don't know if I have any questions, but it's the water issue has come up with. I've had some people who live in Kodiak have talked to me about this, and I don't listen to a lot of P&Z meetings, but I listened to this P&Z meeting, and I think that the presentation by the friends, by the applicants, was good and responded to a lot of the concerns well, and I think that's what led to the P&Z vote. I know there's still more steps to do beyond our rezoning when it comes to the water issue, but there are people, that is a concern, and I hope that we can perhaps learn a little bit more about it. But I think I'm pretty satisfied by what happened at the P&Z meeting. So, and some of the other residents that I talked to at Kodiak, when they listened to it, they were also a little more satisfied than not satisfied.
Okay. Anyone else? Thank you, Chris. Next is other items. First one is administration of oath of office to newly elected officials. Nova, I'll let you give a staff report on your procedures.
I will I will be administering the oath of office to the mayor and then to the as newly elected assembly members next week. That's my report. Thank you.
And then the presentation to outgoing, I'll give that to you too.
We will be presenting outgoing certificates to Assembly Member Delgado and Assembly Member Smith.
Thank you. Next is confirmation of assembly appointment to the Woman's Bay Service Area Board of Mr. Travis Cooper. That'll be coming up on there. Next item on the agenda is manager's comments. Amy?
Manager's comments. First, I'd like to point out in staff recruiting, we had our second in-person interview for our open planner position. The candidate was on island. He's actually in audience, so you can view him in person right here. Thank you for coming tonight. We also yesterday posted our in-house notification for our accounts payable technician. We had someone resigned this week. They're going to move their family to the lower 48, so we are starting the advertising for their job. We do it in-house first for 5 days, and then we open it up to the public. So we're trying to get that done as quickly as possible, so hopefully that we can find someone and have some overlap with our current employee for training. We already talked about the fact that Mark Hickey is going to be here at our work session on the 26th. For the school district, I met with the superintendent and we reviewed the March 2015 Memorandum of Understanding of In-Kind Services that I gave you last week. We also talked about the 1999 Alaska School Facilities Preventative Maintenance Handbook. And then she reached out to the state commissioner to ask if there had been an update to that book, and there actually has not. There was periods of time where it was open for public comment in the past, but it doesn't appear that anything's been done on it since April of '22. But they are looking to update it, and so I think it's well past due for an update. As Cindy and I sat there and talked, we both agreed that we need a better defined process for maintenance that the district completes and major maintenance that the borough completes. And we discussed the merits of having a school facilities advisory board, much like we have for the hospital advisory board, and the benefits that have come with that. I think with the hospital advisory board have been very beneficial to making decisions and future planning. So we're going to talk about, I already planted the seed with the mayor, so hopefully we'll be able to talk about that at a future meeting, the merits of that, and see if there's interest from the assembly in setting something like that up. Staff has reviewed the second amendment for the solid waste contract, and it's ready for review by the solid waste subcommittee once that is set up. In engineering and facilities, I'm just going to hit a couple of highlights. We have a discharge permit that is open for public notice right now. It's open for comments from outside agencies and general public if they have any. That's open until November 3rd. And the GSA personnel are going to be here next week, and we're going to talk about that reception position at KFRC to see if we can't figure out how to get that open over the winter months as well. At the leachate treatment plant, this is the week where we're trying to start up the pre-treatment plant. And with all new projects, we're having computer glitches and having trouble having one piece of equipment talk to the other piece of equipment. But they are working through those, and that's going as well as it could. There is another Health and Facilities Advisory Board scheduled for October 30th. The Borough building, we are getting really close to being able to hook up the electric boilers. Right now, the heat you feel is all from our diesel boiler. I have had concern expressed to me about the temperatures and us replacing the concrete outside, so we've reached out to the contractors and talked to them about the possibility of delaying concrete until the spring, or just doing it smartly given the forecast and the cold temperatures that we've had recently. In finance, Dory already told us about the property tax deadline that's coming up on Monday, October 16th. If you did not make your half payment by August 15th, full payment of taxes are required by October 16th to avoid penalties and interest. Our new IT director starts Monday, so we're excited to welcome him aboard on Monday. And in IT, Michael Delia earned his CompTIA Network Plus certification. I did have to look that up. It covers troubleshooting, configuring, and managing networks. So we have another network specialist in-house, which is wonderful. And congratulations to Michael for making it there. Paul Van Dyke, for as long as I think since right after I started, had a $50 bill thumbtacked to his wall for the next person who got a certification. They got to take the cash, and no one had gotten one before Paul left, so it moved from his office out to the main area, and Michael finally got to take that off and take it home with that certification, so that was fun. In assessing, they are down to 2 applications that are awaiting information from the PFD, so it's nice to see that number going shortly down. They are busy preparing for the short-term rental discussion, so they have some facts for you when we talk about that on October 26th. The Planning and Zoning Commission just met last night, where they talked about ADUs and potential changes to that code. Chris already talked to us about the pro-housing grant tonight, and this week was the first time Chris presented to me kind of a rough timeline to start the update of the comprehensive plan, and that hasn't been done in a long time, so it's exciting to see work done on that. That pro-housing grant will help us update a small part of that, but as Assemblymember Griffin pointed out earlier, we have some work to do on updating our plans of all sorts. So I'm excited to see a timeline on that. And it's like 18 to 24 months, and that's if we get some help along the way. So it's not going to be a short process, but I'm excited to see that get going. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Just about the whole report, or just?
Yes.
Larry?
Just a couple. The state lobbyist, have we invited Senator Stevens and Louise Stutes to sit in on that presentation?
I have not. Nova, have you? Have we invited Senator Stevens and Representative Stutes to attend that October 26th session? We could. Would you like us to?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Just to comment on the committee with KIBSD and the Borough Facilities Review Committee, I think that would be a good idea. I think it would facilitate really solid communication between the borough who owns the facilities and the school district who is putting a large amount of funds in that area. And I think it's important that they work very closely together, and I think that would be a really good thing to do. The other question I had, and I apologize if I haven't been keeping up. I wasn't on the assembly when they approved the solid waste contract, but it seemed to take a long time and was very stressful at times. And when I see edits to the contract, I'm just wondering what kind of edits to the contract are being made, and if there are things that should have been included in the original bid, that they're now changing, or why are we editing it? And because it doesn't seem proper, if it's a changing of the bid specs that other people bid on and now they're being changed.
We're trying to be very careful to avoid all bid spec items with how much money will be going to Alaska Waste. The Second Amendment are clarifications. We've had some consumer complaints, some customer complaints from residents, and the way that they read it and the way that they define the contract isn't in the spirit of how the contract we thought people would read it, and so it clarifies that language. Our big issue in the Second Amendment is a multi-use building, where our definition of required service is a premise, and a premise is a building on a tract of land. But what we really want is any portion of that premise that has a business or a residential unit in it, they would be required to have a trash bill. So what we've done is taken out the word premise, changed it with unit, and put in information that further describes how that multi-purpose unit would be billed. That's the main push of this. Alaska Waste is asking for some changes, and they're included for the subcommittee to review. But my opinion on those is no, but that's just my opinion. So that's why I've asked for the subcommittee, because as we just go back and forth with Alaska Waste, they are commenting on the fuel prices and how much more it's costing them to collect trash. And I am concerned about the other bidders. We have one of the other bidders sitting on the assembly, so we're very aware of making sure that we keep with the original intent of the bid process, but we're just helping define things and clarify that language.
And finally, this will be an easy one. When is the contract ended? When do we go to bid for a new one?
It's a 5-year contract with.
No, it's a 7-year contract with 3 1-year extensions.
I
Total
was
of
going
10
to answer
years
that totally wrong, so I'm glad the mayor could help out with that.
on there. So it started when shortly before Amy got on the assembly there that year. So
2027?
basically, yeah, in 20, I think.
Given the length of the contract and when these changes take place, or these edits, and I appreciate you being very careful, when would they come back to the assembly for approval, since we're changing a contract that assembly previously?
After
We
the
have-
subcommittee.
We set up a subcommittee for the First Amendment as well. And so that was like my first job on the assembly. And so I was on there with Jeff and the mayor when we were all assembly members. And then that's just an advisory committee to the assembly. So what we go through and decide, and the original contract, from the second you opened it up, the table of contents was wrong. The math and just in determining the prices for fuel changes or collection charges. Even the math examples were wrong. So it was not a good contract. So we went through there and clarified a lot of that stuff and refigured out the math. And if they should get a fuel increase the first year or it had to stay, we clarified a lot of that language, and a lot of that work was done well before I got on the assembly. But that's the first time we set up that confidential file for the assembly so they could go in and review all those documents. So that's that same model we're using now for the tax documents. But that's just it's set up just to make a recommendation to the assembly, and then the assembly has to vote on the amendment. So nothing gets done without assembly approval in changing that contract.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on the manager's report? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to clerk's comments. Nova?
I don't have a written report to the Assembly clerk's report. I've been busy with elections, so I just want to remind everyone that the Alaska Municipal League Conference is going to be held December 6th through the 8th, and the agendas are printed and they're before you. If you're interested in traveling, please let us know as soon as possible so we can start making arrangements. And also, I would like to remind outgoing Assembly members to please fill out your exit Alaska Public Officials Commission financial disclosure forms.
Otherwise known as APOC.
Yes, because if you don't fill those out, there may be some penalties that you're going to be incurring. And we will also notify you by email, including the school board member that's also she didn't run for a re-election, so we will be notifying everyone. That's all I have for today. Thank you.
You know where that's directed. Okay, next item is assembly member comments. Start with you, Scott.
The son of a friend of mine and his wife and 6-year-old son sailed from Nova Scotia up around North America, down through Bering Straits, down through False Pass, stopped in Old Harbor, stopped in Kodiak, and are wintering in Seward. And I wanted to acknowledge that takes some brass to do that. And they just an amazing couple and an amazing child. So hats off to them.
Thank you for sharing that. Larry,
Does it take brass because they're staying in Seward instead of?
you want to turn his mic on?
Anyway, a couple of things.
It takes gold.
Cool. I would like to, and I haven't solicited it from 2 other assembly members, to have a map of borough-owned land. What land we actually own. And I'm not interested in our agreements at, Long Island or Termination Point. I want just land that's potentially available for development. And I see somebody saying they already have that.
It's available online.
And if I could get a copy of that. The other thing I would be interested in real language, is the steps necessary to, once land is identified for sale, the steps, a timeline and steps necessary to actually put it up for auction. Okay, which is interesting, because I was told it takes well over a year to do so. And that was a long time ago. And so I would like to know the steps that we would have to go through, because, as I've said before, I'm very, very interested, and I think the public is interested in releasing land to the public for development. Does she need to say something? Because she's looking at me
No.
like I'm... Oh,
Continue.
okay.
Assembly member comments.
So
need
that
you
would
to say.
be the steps necessary to sell it to the public in a way that, can be released to the public. I would also like to wish happy birthday to Assembly Member Ryan Sherritt, who I know would be here if he could be. And also he left a list of comprehensive notes for the meeting tonight. So even though I wasn't here, certainly some of the questions tonight were oriented. Finally, well, not really finally, but I'm very, very interested in the discussions on accessory dwelling units. from my point of view, and cities all over the country, this is how they've addressed, making affordable housing. It's the simplest and cheapest, and we developed it for that purpose, and it has just sort of never really worked out. And I really appreciate the discussions that are going on, I've heard, about ADUs. But I think it would be really good if we could have a report to the Assembly on how those discussions are going and what are the challenges related to ADU development. Because I certainly, when I was on the Assembly last time, was involved, and then when I left, it took on a life of its own. So I'm very, very interested, because it's the easiest thing to provide housing. And also, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to thank you again for a well-run election. Recount everything, you're right on top of it, and I can't think of anybody that does a better job than you in managing. And the other thing I like is all the people that come out to help you. They've been doing it sometimes for decades, and there they are. So thanks, Kodiak, and congratulations to those who ran for office and those who were elected. Thank you.
Thank you. Jared?
I just want to say thanks to the staff and the manager and the clerk for just extensive, thorough work that you do every week, and it makes our job so much easier. And I'm just never short of amazed just how much you do. We get to see that every week, how much you do. So I'm just really appreciative of that.
Thank you. Joe?
I'm excited to see the first assembly meeting in one of the villages. That's going to be something nice. Hopefully we can start having assembly members travel to the villages just for fact-finding missions again. I think that will be nice too. I see the relationship between the rural sites and the borough is being repaired, and that is good. We get a much better product out of the borough when it works like that. It's a give and a take, and that's good. So many years I heard the saying, taxation without representation, but we are getting a lot more input from the village peoples now, and that is good. I like seeing the number of people on this assembly that when things come before us, one of their first questions is, how is this going to affect the people that are living in the villages? That was very rare to hear in the past, but it's becoming more and more a normal thing. So I really like that, and I like sitting up here with these guys and women. I've learned a lot in the time that I've been here. One more thing I'd like to say, there is Shackmanov Bay is open again. The granite quarry is open. They're producing size gravel. So if I lived in a service area here in Kodiak, I would be talking to my service area boss and say, is there a way that we can get some of that gravel here in Kodiak? Maintenance costs go way down. Dust control, it's 98% dust free once it's put on the ground. That stuff works good, and it's right next door to us. The quarry operator told me that one of the limiting factors right now is just that there aren't enough customers. Right now, their prices are a little high, but they said as soon as more customers come in and ask for it, the prices will lower. There are 6 tribal transportation programs around the island that get almost $1 million between them all. That's a lot of money that can be put towards that. If the villages and the borough and the city can work together, they can get some of that stuff out of there and onto the roads. Everybody will love it. That's all for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. James?
No comment, thank you.
Okay. Mayor's comments, just want to thank Nova for all the work that the clerk's office does and all the volunteers that you have that come forward to help you. So hats off to all of them. So thank you. Let's see, that's all we have tonight, so work session adjourned at 8.
One more. You all have one of these. Yeah, it's in that envelope.
Valuation.
There's one in the envelope.
You got your mic on, Scott?
No.
I always leave my microphone on. Fill it out and turn it in by the 26th. Thank you.
Thank all of you. So with that, we'll adjourn
Don't-
here at
I
8:22
hate it too, but we have to fill
PM.
it out.
Thank you all.
Okay, I'll fill it out.